So I recently purchased a Carista to be able to reset the service reminder after changing the oil on my 2009 Audi A4. And I ran a scan to see if there were any active codes in the system, and there was an error code for the front door speakers not working, which is kind of strange, and I never actually noticed it. But yeah, after turning on the radio, I've confirmed they're not working. And so wasn't sure if it was just the speakers that were bad or if it was something else, because both of them were not working. So it seemed kind of strange that the speakers would be bad. I figured it was maybe something within the audio system, that was broken. It definitely wasn't a fuse, since they don't have any fuses that are burnt out. So I ended up pulling out the speaker and checking the resistance across the two terminals. And you should see an ohm value, probably between 2 and 4. And so to do that, this is one of the door speakers that I already pulled out. You just check the resistance across the two terminals. And if you can see, it just shows OL. So it's just infinity, so there's no resistance at all. And there should be, like I said, at least 2 to 4 ohms at least. And so if you can notice, or if you can actually see on the wires, you can see a little bit of corrosion. And I do live in a wet climate, and so I did notice after the car was sitting outside, within the door itself, there was some moisture buildup, and you can see that it's corroded. And so I assume that that's what the issue is. So actually checked the resistance further down, so closer to the internal speaker. And you can actually see it's kind of hard because the wires keep moving. So there's about 2 ohms past the area where the wires are corroded, and this is actually my second shot at fixing the speakers. And I tried actually soldering past pulling off this wire and trying to resolder it to try to remove some of this corrosion. And that didn't work. I wasn't even actually able to solder on this wire. It seems like there's some maybe sort of fiber within the wire itself, so you can't even actually solder on it. So I ended up just picking up a set of speakers, but the issue is these Audi speakers are actually 8 inches, which is not really a common size. Most of the aftermarket speakers are about 6.5 inches across, or in diameter. And what I did was I ended up purchasing a set of infinity speakers, and they're 6.5 inches across. So there's a couple options. You can make your own mount out of wood, which I guess it'll work, but I've heard of stories where there's moisture buildup and it leads to mold eventually. And I noticed there was another company, a small company in Pennsylvania, that actually sells a mount similar to this, but it just it fits a 6.5 inch speaker. I think they have another one that fits a 5 or so inch speaker, and it's around $30, which is pretty reasonable. But after checking this out and determining that the speaker, it's pretty much junk. You can't really solder on this at all. And buying some aftermarket half-decent speakers were only around like $65. And I assume they're probably going to be better than these. New OEM speakers are about, I think, around $100 a piece, and you may just end up having the same problem again. So what I thought about doing was, I have a 3D printer, and I decided to 3D print just sort of a plate that would fit within the speaker housing itself, and then epoxy that in and just drill some holes into the plate to fit the 6.5-inch speaker. And so I'm just going to walk through a few steps that I did to modify this, the speaker housing, to fit an aftermarket 6.5-inch speaker, and then that leaves you a ton of different options that are going to be a lot better than the OEM speaker. I don't have the Harman Kardon system. These are just the standard Audi speakers that come with a car. And so I'm going to go through the steps to show you how to modify your OEM speaker housing to fit an aftermarket 6.5-inch speaker. So the first step is to unsolder the terminals for the speaker wires and just pull these wires off. And then after doing so, you can take a Dremel or some other tool such as a hacksaw to just cut off all of these mounts on the speaker. And so once you cut these off, you'll be able to pull the speaker itself out of the housing. And there's this grill here, and I ran into an issue even trying to just take it off. These clips here are really brittle, and they just break. And so you probably won't be able to reuse this unless you can get it off without breaking these tabs. But the door itself has a grill, and so this isn't really even needed. It was probably just here just for distribution of these speaker housings, without to not damage the speaker itself. But yeah, this grills aren't even needed since there's one in the door already. So go ahead and show you what I did. And so I have a Dremel, and so I'm just gonna go ahead and cut off all these mounts after unsoldering these wires off the terminals. And so you can see that the speaker is actually glued on to this housing, and so you'll have to just cut it off and then clean up the excess glue and speaker material with some alcohol or just some goof off. So you can see now you have a clean opening to build a plate, and so there's a plastic lip around the edge. And so if I remember correctly, plate needs to be about 7.5 inches in diameter, and then the hole in the center to fit a 6.5-inch speaker is 5 inches. And so I ended up 3D printing a plate, but like I said, you could actually build one from wood or plexiglass possibly. I mean, that would work. And go ahead and show you. This is the little plate that I 3D printed, and it was about, I think, 6 millimeters. You could make it a little thicker, but 6 millimeters is seems to be sufficient. And so, as you can see, this plate here fits perfectly around the lip itself. And I have some Permatex plastic welder, and I'm just going to go ahead and spread that around this edge after I clean off this excess material. And there's some glue as well, so you probably want to use goof off, and then also just lightly sand the edge so the epoxy sticks. And go ahead and just glue this directly onto the housing. So I'm just going to let this sit up for a few hours and then go ahead and drill the holes for the 6.5-inch speaker. And so the Infinity speakers that I purchased come with this template. But what I found it was easiest just to take the speaker itself and just mark the holes. But I mean, you basically just need to make sure that it's centered. And so where this plug is here, that's the top, and so you just want to make sure that your speaker is in the right position whenever you drill the holes. So I ended up getting the plate that I 3D printed epoxied on, and then I just mounted the speaker to it with 4 included screws. And I did end up painting the plate flat black. I had some Rust-Oleum sitting around, and so I figured I'd just have it match the housing, even though you won't really even be able to see it since the speaker is completely covered by the door panel and then the factory grille. So that's the finished product without mounting it. I do still have to solder the wiring. And so one nice thing about using this factory housing is that you don't have to mess or cut any of your factory wiring. You can use the plug that's already attached to the door panel that goes to the rest of the electrical circuits, and then just you can look at the existing plug and just determine which one is positive and which one is negative. On the speaker, the smaller terminal I think is a negative one, and so I just have some extra wire sitting around that I'm going to solder on directly to the plug. And then all you have to do is just mount the speaker and then just plug it right in, and it'll work. I already did the driver's side speaker, so that's how I know it's going to work. And yeah, it just makes for a nice, easy swap, I guess, in the future if you ever have to replace a speaker. So I just did go with an Infinity reference, which is just sort of a middle-of-the-road speaker. I don't need anything that's super high-end, but at least something that's, a little better than factory. And so I'm going to go ahead and solder up these wires, and then I'll get it mounted to the door panel, and I'll just show you what that looks like before I put the door panel back on. So I got it all soldered up. It only took just a few minutes. It's pretty quick. It's just 2 wires and 4 terminals that you just need to solder to. I would tin the wires as well as the terminals lightly before you solder them on, and just don't leave the iron on the terminals too long, so you don't want to damage the speaker or the plug itself. So I'm going to go ahead and mount this to the car, and then I'll show you what it looks like. It's only 4 screws or 4 bolts, and then just 1 plug. So here's the speaker mounted to the car. You can see utilizes the existing plug, and you don't have to mess with your wiring at all. It almost looks factory, even though we're not really going to see it behind the door panel, but I'm one of those people that still wants to make it look nice either way. And so I just tested it out real quick, and it's working fine. So I'm going to go ahead and throw the door panel back on, and it should be ready to go. And here's just a quick shot of the door panel back on. You can see the speaker grill completely conceals what's behind it. So there's no way to tell that it was replaced, but you just have better sound now. So I hope that helped. I know I looked around on the internet to find an easy solution, but for this model and this size speaker, which is originally 8-inch, there just wasn't many options. And so since the speakers were basically junk anyway, I figured I'd try to cut up the housing and just see what I could make do, and it ended up working out great. I don't think there's any other better way to do it other than maybe to purchase another housing online, but then you may run into the issue of having to splice into your factory wiring, which may or may not be a big deal. I mean, this car's out of warranty anyway, so it doesn't really matter.